All right, so we'll kick off the program now, and I just want to welcome everyone, give you the FYI that we are recording this presentation so that we can share it with folks who RSVP'd and on BNRC's YouTube channel in the future. And I also want to let you know that if you would like to use the closed captionings, you can enable that at the bottom of the Zoom window by clicking on Live Transcript and then Show Subtitles. So yeah, thank you for joining us for this program tonight about Berkshire Natural Resources Council's trail work. I'm Mariah, the Community Conservation Manager for BNRC, and I'm joined tonight by Kathleen Smolinski, the Assistant Director of Fundraising and Community Engagement, and Charlotte Hood, the Volunteer and Outreach Coordinator, and our speaker tonight, Tyler Fogg, Assistant Director of Stewardship. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, Berkshire Natural Resources Council is a regional land trust actively working throughout Berkshire County on land conservation, land stewardship, and community engagement. BNRC conserves land to protect water resources and wildlife habitat for climate resilience and to connect people to nature through accessibility and engaging activities. And that connection to nature can really take many forms, like enjoying trails, which we'll hear more about tonight, bird watching, supporting local farms, that sort of thing. And it can really be deepened by learning about and engaging with the land. So just wanted to pause for a moment and acknowledge the deep connection of the Mohican people to this land, which is their historic homelands. They called themselves the people of the waters that are never still, the Mohikanauk, and they lived and cared for what we now call the Berkshires and well beyond for thousands of years before Europeans forcibly seized their lands with neither shame nor remorse. Today, their community resides in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Muncie community. And these lands continue to be of great significance to the Mohican people, and there are numerous ways to engage, learn, and deepen your connection to the Mohikanauk. And we'll send some of those resources out in a follow-up email. So we ask at this time that you please give thought to the native land that you are zooming in from as well. And with that, I will pass it over to Kathleen.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of the donors who are attending this session with us here tonight. I see quite a few of you, so welcome. If you don't know, BNRC is a donor-funded organization, so all the conservation, wildlife protection, farmer support, climate resilience, free access to the Berkshire outdoors, and free events like this one are thanks to donors. So I'm just going to throw a quick link into our chat here for the BNRC online donation page if you'd like to make a gift. But thank you all for your help and your generosity, and I hope everyone enjoys the program today.
Hi, everyone. Now I'm going to introduce our speaker tonight. Tyler Fogg is the Assistant Director of Stewardship for BNRC. Tyler is originally from Eastern Massachusetts and grew up hiking in the White Mountains and Baxter State Park. His trail building career began in 2011 on a backcountry crew in Northern California and has worked on trail crews in Maine, Massachusetts, and Utah, and as a historic preservation specialist for the National Park Service. As a member of the BNRC team, Tyler facilitates trail construction projects, trains trail staff, and helps to steward the goals of sustainable, accessible, and memorable trails and their relationship to the broader mission of conservation in the Berkshires. Tonight, Tyler will be sharing a summary of BNRC's 2023 trail crew season, discussing how projects are identified, prioritized, planned, and executed over the 60 miles of miles of trail system that BNRC cares for. At the end of Tyler's presentation tonight, there will be a question and answer session. So if questions come up along the way, please jot them down so that you remember them at the end. Now I'll pass it off to you, Tyler.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, so I'm going to share some photos and some details about a lot of the work that the trail crew and the stewardship crew did this year, the 2023, along with a lot of support from volunteers and other folks. So the first, can go to the next slide. So this isn't a discussion of too much of the philosophy around trails, which is an awesome conversation to have and very important. But just really quickly before I get going into some more details, you know, why do all this work? Why all the effort? It's a good question to ask, and one that is important as when you're starting out with a new project. So at a technical level, physically, what a trail does is focus the impact of people and protects the resource that surrounds it, provides access to special places, and creates connections. And that's not only connecting to your favorite lookout or a picnic area or something. It's also helping people to connect to the land, connect with each other. And so those are all important things. Next slide. And at BNRC, we try to put a lot of focus on long-term sustainability with our trails. That's not only brand new trails that we're designing and constructing currently, but also retrofitting historic or older trails to be brought up to a new standard. And we're seeing that more and more with the way that climate change is working and affecting everything. But for our purposes, our outdoor spaces are seeing more water and more rain events specifically that are kind of doing harm in ways that they weren't designed to manage. So yeah, the focus on sustainability. It's important to go through an intentional design process and have put a lot of thought into something that's important because, as a conservation organization, we're tasked with being responsible and thoughtful with our land use. It's not, as much as possible, we want to create trails and do things in a way that are in harmony with our environment and with a long view about the impacts that we are making. Next slide. So yeah, early last year, we started out with a project that we began in 2022 at Thomas and Palmer Brook. We built this footbridge over a seasonal stream, and we used steel I-beams. It's the trail system in this location is kind of a woods road motif, so we wanted to stick with that with a wider bridge. Also, what the steel bridge allows us to do is have equipment access for future projects. We built, the steel frame came in pieces. We moved those in, erected it, and then built the approaches out of stone that we gathered on site and crushed in. Next one. Early this year, we also, and this is going back to what I said about mega rain events and changes in weather, had some trail tear out issues at the charcoal trail, which was, in these photos, you can kind of see some of these trees that are just downhill of the treadway or just uphill. When they unroot, their root ball will take up a section of trail. So we worked to reconstruct that section in the same place using natural stone and some rigging systems to bring in some boulders to armor the side of the trail where it had been torn out and refill it with natural materials. So this is the after the restoration was complete, and we put a lot of effort into renaturalizing, making sure things kind of go back to as much as as much as possible the way they looked before, and that just creates some good visual cues so that folks use the trail the way that we intend them to use. Parsons Marsh in Lenox is an awesome property. It's one of our accessible trail locations. It also features some pretty cool historic stonework, including this this dam that was probably part of a maybe Stoneover farm at one time. But the dam had broken in one location, and was the outflow was in a place that wasn't designed for, and so we went about fixing that, and we'll show you on the next slide. There had been previous attempts to repair the dam with logs and imported clay materials, but it had been years since that effort was made, and it was still flowing in that same location. Next slide. So we created a access way over the spillway. The bridges along the trail are not rated for this level of machinery, so we had to build some temporary access to be able to get a machine in there. We used Sheffield clay, which was brought in from a local source to cap and waterproof the edge of the dam. Was phase 1. And then armoring that clay with stone and backfilling. In this picture, you'll see where the gully was, where it was flowing, just how much it was, probably 4 or 5 cubic yards of imported material that we brought in and tamped down. And then with volunteer support, did some native plantings and brought it back to its original glory. This was a project that was kind of a hybrid of contractors, volunteers, and the BNRC crew, and it flowed really, really well, and pretty awesome to see what you can do with just a lot of hands and some handy machinery, which is nice. We then moved on to the Hoosick Range, and with the addition of a memorial bench honoring former BNRC President Tad Ames. This site was chosen not only because of his significance to BNRC, but also that it's a proper location for a bench along the Sunset Rock Loop at this really nice overlook. It was a tricky place to put something that needs to be level where nothing else is level. So we went about some pretty tricky stonework to make a level pad for the bench. You can go to the next slide. So on the right hand slide or picture here, you can see just how much we had to build up that area and backfill it with crush to make a level pad for the bench. We also did some trainings with Peter Jensen and Associates out at Pleasant Valley this summer. Peter is well known in Berkshire County and farther out for just how his very long career with trail building and design. They were working on a new section of accessible trail, and with BNRC wanting to get more into accessible trails, we kind of worked with him to kind of see that process from all the way through, from beginning to end. So that was really great. We got some work with site prep, and then using geotextile fabric and bringing in material, also making sure that all the grades are correct, and all the way down to like finishing the sides and everything like that. So that was a great boost in knowledge for our crew and BNRC moving forward with not only building new accessible trails in the future, but maintaining the ones that we have currently. We moved on to the boulders and engaged in a drainage project that involved some machine building, a nice new inside ditch, and some culverts to fix up a section of trail that had become the drainage due to failed culverts and a gullying effect. This is something that hopefully we're going to engage in more in the future. And what I was talking about with retrofitting some of our older trails that may have once been access ways for logging or other types of wood roads that just don't have the infrastructure to remain in a sustainable sense. So we will work to bring those up to our standards. Here's the completed section on the left, and then a detail of another section we did at the boulders with a culvert and some nice stonework to alleviate some wet trail areas. It's nice when you're able to locate the source of a water drainage issue and focus in on that, on fixing that source water and moving it away from the trail or underneath it, as this case was. Speaking of sustainability and accessible trails, Old Mill Trail is an awesome location out in Hinsdale and Dalton. Originally built by Peter Jensen to accessibility standards, but over the years we've just had some issues with maintaining those specifications. So we put a lot of time in this year to do some regrading and fixing some of these gaps in the from treadway to bridge and things like that. Go to the next slide. This was a section of really cool kind of stepstone-y area, but if you'll see on the picture, it's a rough enough surface and uneven enough that it falls out of specification. So we were able to save the underlying stone and with the addition of some retaining wall and more surface material, kind of smooth it out and make it within specification. This was an area where on this trail there's a kind of a looping switchback that goes down, that takes you back down towards the river, but it was the grade was too much of a grade to be sustainable, really. And so we actually did some digging, no pun intended, but and found out that the original trail, actually, if you looked at the picture on the left, it swoops much farther left than it looks like in the picture. And so we brought that longer turn back and renaturalized the section on the right to meet those grade requirements. Went from a 15% or more grade back to 10%, which is within spec for an accessible trail. We also did some culvert restoration. This was one that, if you'll see on the picture on the left here, that you can sort of see the corrugated plastic culvert there, but it's completely buried. And the crew had spent a lot of time unplugging. I mean, it was full of sand and debris, and so we needed to rebuild a basin to catch the water and put it into the culvert, and then the outflow as well as reopening the culvert itself. Came out really nice. Basin Pond, this was our second summer there. We got postponed a little bit because of all the rain. Working in a wetland buffer area, we had to wait till there was low flow, which there wasn't much of that this summer. But 2 summers ago we built some bridges, and then came back this past summer and did some work resetting these stepstones. I think what happened originally when this trail was built is that whatever was there as far as a crossing was used, but it wasn't manipulated. So we were able to remanipulate those stones, make them a kind of a nicer walking surface, nicer to walk on, a better cadence for stepping on, just to increase people's confidence, especially in wintertime or when it's wet out and those rocks can be slippery and everything. So that's what we did. For a lot of these stone projects, this one included, we used a highline rigging system. Top left here, you can see our trail crew member Peyton using that highline to lift a stone into the air, manipulate it along a line, and lower it down. It's a fairly simple system. It's really powerful and really helps us protect ourselves, but also do types of projects that we really couldn't do. It's not just about efficiency always. A lot of times, it's just not what humans are built for, to lift up huge rocks and put them around and everything. So we like to use mechanical advantage when possible. And that goes along with being able to break stones and make the types of material that we need. This was an emergency repair project that we did at Alford Springs. There's a culvert that runs under this woods road. It's part of our trail system on the Mother Loop. This culvert had been compromised by just water flow in and around the culvert itself, and that was causing a sinkhole. So we had to dig back the surface, rebuild the sides, the retaining sides of the around the culvert, and then backfill it and grade it and smooth it out. So these culvert issues are something that we're seeing in several locations. Long-term plan, I think, is to because back when this was an access route for a farm or a logging road or something, I mean, that the culvert that was installed was out of necessity to get to the other side of the stream. But what we should really be looking at in the future is how can we gain access without disrupting the stream flow, and that will permanently solve problems like this. Our other accessible trail at Thomas and Palmer is fairly new, but we just did some edging work. It's in an open meadow, and the encroachment of vegetation and things was just narrowing the trail, not to an extreme level, but this is just something that we need to stay on top of in terms of our maintenance cycle, and making sure that this gravel remains exposed and to the correct width. Also, while we were at Basin Pond, did some tread rehabilitation. This is a good example of a lot of the work that we do, and this is what we'd call a full bench cut. You can see Jake up here cutting away the soil on the actual treadway, creating a nice crisp back slope, and that angle of back slope and tread is what really gives a good visual cue of where the trail is. It creates a nice outslope to the trail, to the tread itself, so that water sheet flows across, from uphill to across the trail and downhill. That's what we always want to see, and as opposed to having water run down the trail. It's never the goal. So yeah, next slide. And then in the chillier months towards the end of the season, we found ourselves at the Hoosick Range. Hoosick Range is a wonderfully built trail in a really great location. There's a lot of bedrock, and so much water this year, so much rain, and nowhere for it to go. So we had a lot of saturated areas that weren't really going to be positively affected by like a water bar or a drainage, because it's not really for these locations. It was less about moving water flowing and more about just that it's pooling. So the solution there is to do a bunch of step stones. Thankfully, stone is not something that's in short supply up there. So it was a good solution, and in keeping with the rest of the trail, because it's already heavy on the stonework and steps and step stones and things like that. And here's a section of some tread rehabilitation, step restoration. You can see on the left-hand side here the pre-work photo. There's these two kind of tablet rocks sticking up out of the ground, and no one's using them because folks tend not to use steps unless you guide them in that direction. So I'm not sure what happened here originally. Probably is a combination of just erosion, because these are sitting on ledge. If you dig down, there's bedrock underneath here. So the solution was to rebuild this outside retaining wall, capture those stones so they have some support on the side, and then do a little bit of filling and renaturalization. So the big takeaways from our season in 2023, we spent a lot of time restoring and rehabilitating existing trails, some of our most popular, most loved trails. And this is something that it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to do, to be able to take care of these resources, to be able to offer high quality outdoor experiences. We've done some of our first in-house use of machinery that includes mini excavators, tracked wheelbarrows, plate count compactors, things like that. And kind of like what I was saying about the our Highline system, it really opens up options for the types of work that we can engage in, and that in turn opens up new possibilities for new types of trails, or yeah, just all that kind of good stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, great. So yeah, for 2024, it's 2024. So we're starting to, fill out our calendar right now. We have some exciting new projects in the works out at Tom Ball. I hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag on that one, but we're going to be down there a lot this year, opening up an awesome new loop. And yeah, looking forward to it. It's you can go to the next slide. So yeah, that was I don't know, what time is it? 6 o'clock. So plenty of time for questions, and happy to. I'm not the one working the slides here, but I'm sure we can go back and if people have questions about photos or anything else, I'm happy to have that discussion.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tyler. And
Yeah.
Before we move on to questions, the gentleman in this picture is John Lucan, who is BNRC's trail crew leader, and I know is on the Zoom chat tonight. So shout out to John, and also for taking most of the photos that were shown in here. So for the question and answer, there are a couple ways we could do this since we have a kind of a small group. If folks would like to just virtually raise your hand, that's an option at the bottom of the screen. That will prompt me to know that you have a question, and I can unmute you and you can ask your own question. You can input it into the actual Q&A. There's an option that at the bottom of your screen. And if that all seems a little too complicated, there's always the chat. So a few options. I think our preference would be the Q&A if you don't mind, but this helps us keep track with it a little bit more. But I think I see a question come in already, so I'll just kick it off with that and folks can chime in as they see fit. So Mark asks, what is geotextile fabric?
Okay, so the geotextile is part of the structure of a gravel surface trail. And what it does, it goes down on top of your mineral soil layer. So the process of building an accessible trail, at least the ones that we've done so far, involves removing the organic layer from your build site. And that includes grass, any other organic stuff, roots, and then this geotextile fabric, it's a non-woven geotextile fabric. And what it does is it prevents the migration of silts into the layer that you put on top of it. So it creates a barrier. It's not it's porous. It's kind of like it's kind of like a thin Brillo pad almost, is the best way I could describe it. It's not quite as rough, but yeah, it's like felt. But that goes down, and it helps to create a barrier between your 4 to 6 inches of crushed stone and the mineral soil underneath it.
Great, thanks, Tyler. So I'm not seeing any other questions yet in the chat or the Q&A. So I thought I would ask you a question. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on the kinds of tools that you use out there. I know you mentioned a few, but could you talk about some other ones?
Sure. Yeah, we have a range of hand digging tools that we use. I don't know what John's leaning on in this. It looks like a shovel and a rock bar, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, the tools that we use range for all the way from hand tools to, like I said, we've been getting into using machines to build things. Yes, shovel and a hazel hoe. So shovel, self-explanatory. A hazel hoe is like um, has a perpendicular blade to the handle, and it's great for chopping through soils and scraping and things like that. So yeah, some of the like I said, the tools fit the stage of trail building that we're in. So we'd use chainsaws, hand saws, loppers, things like that to create a trail corridor. That's opening up everything that's above ground to the sides and above what's going to be your trail. And then for a trail that's going to be bench cut, we would use rakes and loppers to rake away duff and leaves from where our tread's going to be, and then we get into the actual dig with like the hazel hoe and shovels and things like that. There are some locations where you can dig and reuse that material that you're digging up in the same spot, leveling out holes and dips and things. And there's sometimes when we have to actually bucket that stuff out of there and find a site that we can deposit it. It all depends on how thick that root layer is. Ideally, you'll find that what we call organic or mineral soil, which is like that nice kind of terracotta brown, silt clay stuff that hardens up really well and sheds water.
Thanks. I'll let Mariah take it away with the questions we got in the chat.
Thanks, everyone. There was, I'll ask the relevant question to the last one, kind of a follow-up. Let's see if I can answer it where everyone can see. So the Highline tool that you mentioned, it's the first time this person had heard of it. So could you share a little bit more? I think there was a photo in the basin pond.
Yeah, it's not the most descriptive photograph. So yeah, a Highline system involves a long wire rope and a tool that is known, it's called a grip hoist. There are other tools out there that you can do something similar with. What we use is called a grip hoist. It's a tool that has two jaws in it that will pull or push a wire rope 1 inch at a time. So it's a hand. You use a handle to crank this tool, and it'll either pull a rope in or push rope out. Unlike like a winch that actually rolls a cable or a wire rope on a spool, this grip hoist will either push that rope right through the machine or pull it the other direction through the machine. So with that, you can set up a cable or a wire rope between two trees. In this picture, you can see a red pulley suspended in the tree to the very top left of the picture, and that creates it elevates the wire rope so that when you pull on the wire rope with this grip hoist, it shortens it and makes it want to be straight from one tree to the other. And so if you then put a load on that, it has to pick the load up in order to straighten itself out. And that's what we use. So it's a really cool system. They're incredibly powerful. The grip hoist that we have is rated for, it's a 1 ton rating. And then you can get pretty fancy with other types of rigging equipment to double or even triple that pulling capacity. But like with every tool that we use, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So grip hoists they excel at pulling things that people can't pull by themselves, or lifting them up. And so there's a safety factor to be considered with that kind of thing. Anytime we were using like a rock bar or any other type of tool, there are safety considerations. The safety consideration with a grip with a high line is that you have a suspended load, so making sure you're not under that load, obviously, or even touching it, because we chain these rocks up, but the rock could break or splinter in one location and shift. So we never touch the load while it's in the air or while it's under tension. We never cross under the line while it's on tension, along with some other making sure that your equipment is functioning properly and is not damaged, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. We got some questions coming in. I'm going to try and find one that is relevant to what you're just talking about. Someone asks, how far can you transport a rock using the high line?
Well, you can go as far as your two trees are. If so we have a 250-foot wire rope that we've used a couple times. The trick with moving things a long distance with a high line like this is that you're relying on the deflection of the wire. So you think of like it makes a V like this, and your load is in the center, is in the apex of that V. And the closer it gets to being a straight line, the harder it is. It's physics. Don't ask me to explain it. It makes sense. That's as much as I can describe it. But so the reason I say that is because if you're asking the grip hoist to go a really long distance, you either need to be really high up in the tree to create that deflection, or have a very light load that's able to be lifted up. In this instance at Basin Pond, and John would be able to tell you, they've set this high line up, I think 3 or 4 times to get the rocks from where they were being sourced, where they've been quarried, to this site for the stepstones. So, there's thanks, John. Yeah, you said 4 times. So there's a level of time spent in setup and breakdown of the system, but you can get pretty efficient at it. And imagine trying to roll these rocks, the 500 feet that they got rolled, or whatever it was. It might seem like it takes longer to set the high line up, but it's way better, and it's much easier on your body. So for just to nerd out for a minute, I have run high lines that have been hundreds of feet long, but they used slightly different equipment, and we were way up on a slope. So if you're bringing something up from maybe say a little like a little valley up onto a ridge line, you have some of that deflection already built into your system, and you can go really far, which is pretty cool.
Another sort of relevant, not quite a question, but a highlight related to this was John was curious if you could talk about Ernie the Gurney, since he's pictured here.
John Lucan wants me to talk about Ernie the Gurney?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, so one of our silent trail crew members, Ernie, is pictured here. Ernie is a gurney, and a gurney is a tool that we use to carry things like rocks with 2 people. So sometimes it is more efficient to just physically pick something up. But if you have a teammate to help you, it works out really well. We tested the upper limits of Ernie this year, and sadly, he's getting retired because he was under duress at the very end of the year, and just time for a new one. So John built it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Mark is wondering how you get the heavy equipment to the trail site where it will be used without tearing up the ground on the way.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. The machines that we've brought in, we have not taken them in anywhere that I would say would be like a sensitive area. We're usually driving on what's already a compacted trail surface. So, for instance, like that small mini excavator that you saw in one of the slides, it has I think it's a 48-inch tread base, but that machine you can actually pick up the cab, and the tracks will move. It will contract to like 36 inches or something like that. So they're incredibly maneuverable, and yeah, there is, another part of it is how good the operator is at tracking around without digging up too much. If you take really careful, thoughtful turns with a machine like that, you can get pretty good at not churning up. I mean, because if you're tracking around and making a 0 degree turn, one of those tracks is just basically digging at the ground and not going anywhere. But if you would try to avoid that by doing 3 or 4 point turns, all you really have to do is follow it with a rake and redistribute some duff. But yeah, it's something to think about. It's always a balance of our impact as people constructing something and manipulating a landscape versus the end result. And that's why I put so much time into renaturalization and with plantings, with recreating that duff layer. That duff layer is so important to the health of a forest floor, all the critters and everyone that's down there. And yeah, just making sure that we're thoughtful about the impacts we are making, and not doing it where it doesn't need it.
All right, got a couple more questions for you. Ruth is wondering, do you always try to remove any logs or wood when fixing trails and replace with stone?
I think we'll use stone as a rule when it's available. Using wood, using timbers can be a great option. In the Berkshires, we've used hemlock before. It's not the most durable in terms of longevity, especially in ground. But we use a lot of black locust, which has great durability and longevity, but that's an imported material. So we're not cutting a lot of black locust on site. If a timber structure is in good shape, we're not going to arbitrarily, switch that out. But in terms of what we would choose to do with a new piece of infrastructure, or if there's a piece of timber that's failing, sometimes it's just a cyclic maintenance thing. I mean, if we're replacing a sill on a bridge that's a natural timber, if it's only been there for 5 years and it's starting to fail, then maybe we need to make a different management decision. But if it's been there for 20 years, maybe it's the question of, well, is this just the lifespan, and we'll be back in 20 years to replace it again. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just, trails are dynamic features. They change. They're affected by the environment around them and the people using them. And so it's good to keep that in mind also for, when you're trying to pitch, a maintenance cycle and trying to help people understand that you can, as sustainably built or designed as something is, everything takes a level of care and management.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Another question from Joan. Joan says, your team worked at Pleasant Valley on the All Persons Trail. Have you
Yes.
worked with other organizations or towns? And how would that work if a land trust wanted you to do some trail maintenance?
Yeah, I think that was a specific kind of couple-day project where we were um, kind of like a work trade type of thing with Peter, where we needed his guidance and insight and expertise to teach ourselves, and he could use our help. So we didn't go through Pleasant Valley for that partnership, but we have in the past. I mean, our high road route across Yoken Ridge shares land with Mass Audubon, so we've cooperated in that in way. We've loaned out some time to Williamstown Rural Lands, helped Dan Gurr up there this past summer for a couple of days. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of just getting in touch and seeing, BNRC, we're lucky to have the resources to do a lot of this work for ourselves, but also want to, be a resource for other local folks that, have questions or, want some help. I think, and Mariah and Charlotte could probably speak better to this, but deploying volunteer support it has been talked about as an option for other land trusts or things like that. So
Thanks so much. Are there any other questions? We've got about 10 more minutes for the program itself. If we don't have any right at this moment, I had one I'd be happy to ask as we wrap things up here. But in your talk, Tyler, you mentioned wetlands a lot. So I was just curious if you could talk about the permitting process and in terms of, the bigger picture as you talked about sustainable trails and, protecting resources and that sort of thing. So what's it like to get a wetland permit for trail work?
we're lucky to work with some really great experts. We work with Stockman and Associates quite a bit. We also work with Foresight. Both of those organizations have wetland specialists, wetlands scientists. What I look for when we're looking at doing some trail work or building a new trail is, what's the threshold of a wetland versus, water on the trail or something that needs to be drained or something like that. So the process is to have a specialist come out to your work site and do a delineation, and they'll be able to come and they can test soil. They can look for wetland plants, other indicators of a wetland system, and then provide guidance from there. So for instance, like at Old Mill Trail, I was able to work directly with the conservation commissions from Hinsdale and Dalton to say, hey, I know we're doing some work. It's right next to the Housatonic. This is what I would consider to be maintenance, and not a new trail build or something that would rise to the level of needing to apply for a permit. They agreed, thankfully. So that was one instance where we were able to come to a consensus in-house and decide that this work didn't rise to the level of needing a permit. And it was really about improving the function and the sustainability of the trail to make sure that it was not that it wouldn't damage the resource. So again, another plug for regular maintenance. Properly designing and maintaining the trails that we do have, and being thoughtful about that is important, again, for the surrounding environment.
Great. So we did get a question from Susan in the chat that I can actually answer. Susan asks, how soon can we sign up to help with projects? Susan's a longtime volunteer with BNRC, and I think that she is referring to our stewardship workday projects. Our stewardship workdays often work with the stewardship team to help out with various projects. So we are putting our heads together at the moment to plan those for the coming season, and hopefully, it's crazy to think about spring being right around the corner. I like to think that way. Those will be available come April. But I like where your mind is, Susan.
Absolutely. So if folks don't have any other questions, we can just wrap up. I just want to extend a huge thank you to Tyler for walking us through the work that the trail crew and stewardship crew did last year. A lot of great work out there. I'm sure a lot of folks see you out on the trail and provide their thanks, but it's great to have this time and reflect and share all the great work. And thanks to all the participants, whether live tonight or watching the recording. We really appreciate your support, being interested in this topic. We will follow up with all of you with the recording, but also some resources that we've mentioned, and as a post-event survey as well that we would really appreciate you filling out if you have the time. We also have some great both online and in-person events coming up, so I'll send that in the follow-up email as well. And I don't know, Charlotte and Tyler, if you have anything else you want to add before we sign off here.
No, thanks, Brian, Charlotte, for facilitating this. And I'll just one last time say, it's a real privilege to be able to do this kind of work in the Berkshires, and it's a matter of our dedicated staff, but also awesome volunteers and generous donations, and just lots of passion and hard work. So it's a privilege.
They're singing your praises in the chat, so peek that out. All right, everyone. We'll see you soon, I hope.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.